Hello, everybody. I'm Susan Coles, and I'm going to talk to you about networking and advocacy, or the wisdom of crowds. And I'm going to be sharing my screen in 1 minute because I have a feeling that as visual artists, you would be much happier seeing pictures of different things than you would seeing me. So here we go. I really want to explore the theme of collaboration through networking and to share some experiences of mine and also some reading that I have done. I'm looking at really what happens when we start to learn collaboratively together in networks, and how the world has changed to allow that to happen, and how the community of inquiry creates a learning space and supports our well-being and our self-esteem when we're involved in those spaces. So it's about community, it's about collaboration, it's about networks, and it's about INSEA, the International Society for Education Through Art and Design. And for me, it really is a huge honour to be part of this conference. I really have to thank the organisers for inviting me, but more than that, for also having the kind of vision to make this happen online, bringing together people from all over the world under the umbrella of visual art education. And I wear many hats in my work life. Nearly all of them connect to art education, and my talk today will explore connections. And it's a funny world that we live in, isn't it? I mean, the world, it survives everything that nature throws at it, as does the human race, usually. We survive the earthquakes, the tsunamis, the viruses, the diseases, and the disasters that are also people-made, such as war and conflict and pollution, and currently the global warming that is damaging our ecosystem. But there's always a cost, there's always damage, and there's always an aftermath. We don't know what the current pandemic will leave us with long term, but maybe it has reminded us that we are but specks of sand in the history of the world. And as we as individuals then have to make the very best of our own lives and live them with a sense of purpose and moral value. I feel that our own individual and collective love of art is something to be celebrated and remembered, and that we as a group are the champions of something that will help the human race to record what's going on, to recover, to rejuvenate, to be alive again. Because we carry a torch, a bright shining torch, and it's much needed as we live in a world where at the moment the thing that is so important to art education and the arts, touch and other haptic experiences, sensory experiences, are actually being constrained and forbidden by the pandemic rules. So it's sad really at the moment, because right now I can't go into a room full of my fellow creatives. I can't hug them. I can't shake hands. I can't sit close to them. And I actually find that hard. And what replaces this? This is it. I sit in a virtual space. I can talk. I can share images. I can do all those things that can be done virtually. And sometimes when I find that a little bit wearing, I have to remind myself that this happened 20 years ago. Wow. Can you imagine it? If we didn't have all this technology, I would have been quite isolated. And you would have been very isolated as well. And we have to remember that things are better now in the sense that we can still communicate. We need to think a little bit about the internet as well. And we need to think about the fact that it's a transformative infrastructure, because it's been developing this only for about 25 years. And that early internet that we engaged with, known as Web 1, well, it was an internet platform, was designed basically to give out information, and that information remained static unless a publisher changed it. But the current internet structure, Web 2 and hopefully soon Web 3, is user-generated. Instead of being published by somebody, the people use the site to publish and edit the content. The most important shift then is away from broadcasting, which is one-to-many, towards conversational, which is many-to-many models of communication. So the people that were formerly known as the audience are now in control. And the rise of platforms such as Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, they've extended this even further. And the conversation and the sharing can be a constant flow in the lives of those that engage with those platforms. And there is good in the internet and there is bad in the internet, and I accept that as well. But in 1999, as long ago as that, John Seeley Brown, who at that time, he was the chief scientist of the Xerox Corporation and directed its research center, he said at that point in time, there was a profound shift between using technology to support the individual and using technology to support relationships. And he predicted that this shift would be important because we would discover new ways, new tools, new social protocols for helping us to help each other. And that is really the very essence of social learning. And it's also the essence of lifelong learning. Personally, I think there is a definite link between social media and creativity, because you have to be interested in the human condition to do either of those, right? You have to watch, respond, and you have to listen. And if you think about things beyond the arts, and this is Fritjof Capra, who is a physicist and systems theorist, he also wrote that the social network in our world produces a shared body of knowledge, information, ideas, and skills, and that it shapes the culture's distinctive way of life and adds to its values and beliefs. And then the culture's values and beliefs also affect its body of knowledge. So they become a part of the lens with which we see the world. And Capra also wrote in his paper, The Hidden Connections, A Science for Sustainable Living, that one of the key insights of the systems approach has been the realization that the network is a pattern that is common to all life. So wherever we see life in nature, in particular, we see networks, streams and rivers and hills and mountains and trees, etc., etc. So from those early days of the internet, we suddenly had the power and the technology to create powerful groups of new learners, and in my case, teachers, creating a community of practice network as integral to what I do. So one of the texts that pushed me also towards considering the power of networks is this book that I read, and I have read more than one book, by the way. I can't pronounce James's second name, but you can read it on the screen. He's an American writer and journalist, and James contends that groups of people can be collectively more effective at solving problems, undertaking innovation and decision-making than any kind of larger groups, elite groups, I suppose, or individuals. And he argues that learning from the distributed intelligence and knowledge of our large community collaborative groups represents a more powerful way to learn than in isolation within kind of rigid and hierarchical relationships. And my own personal experiences with networks support this. And it's interesting because hierarchies, well, they like secrets, but networks will share. Hierarchy tends to approve, authorize, and allocate, but networks, they learn, enable, and do. So it all kind of started for me when I was studying for my artist teacher MA, and that was between 2006 and 2009. And that was the early days of Facebook, actually. Yeah, there were early days of Facebook. It hasn't been there forever. And I set up a teacher network, and that teacher network was called NEATN, the Northeast Art Teacher Educator Network, in the northeast of England. And that network is now 13 years old, and it's had a massive influence across the region. And our region isn't in London. We're not near all the big galleries and all these important places that you if you don't live in the United Kingdom, would consider and encapsulated what was on offer. We live in our own region, and so we've created our own regional identity, and we've supported our local art educators with our galleries and our arts organisations. And that network, the NEATN network, has actually expanded in the sense that it's gone out of its little regional bubble into a national bubble. And I'm going to explain that to you in a minute, because Neaton is small, right, in one part of the country, and Neaton connects to the National Society for Education, Art and Design, which I am a part of as a member of council and have actually been president of, and everything on that screen tells you about us. We've been there for a long time, and it has a reach across the whole of the UK and beyond, because we have international members and we are a connected organisation with INSEAD. So when I was actually president at NSEAD, I discovered INSEAD. I'd heard about them, but I hadn't really looked into it. And that was because of the influence of Dr. John Steers, who is a former president of INSEAD, who really convinced me of its worth and its value and its importance. And so I joined INSEAD, and then I stood for the World Council, and I have been re-elected as one of the 3 European World Councillors for INSEAD. And I'm really kind of proud of that, because I believe in its mission. And its mission is that it has established, as it did in the 1950s, it's established an international community, and it's dedicated to advocacy and networking and the advancement of practice and research in art education, because it gives a worldwide networking platform for its members. And it really aims to help members share ideas and projects, in addition to really encouraging and promoting dialogue about the contribution that art can make to education. And our reach has widened significantly in the past 2 or 3 years through a more conscious and very active use of social media platforms. We've therefore opened the door to new members. So my little kind of local English circle, right, that English circle has taken me to a bigger circle, to a world circle. So if you look at it as a kind of a diagram there, here I am up in the northeast of England, and I have through the NSEAD connected across the whole of my country, and I have through INSEAD connected to the whole of the world, and then this comes back into your smaller community. And I think that's really important. My kind of INSEAD circle seems to have no barriers apart from time and, of course, time zones. And then you say to yourself, or I say to myself, and I'll get you to say it to yourself, why? Why is it important to me? Well, it's because it's something that I absolutely love. And what is art to me? It's as simple as this. It's everything that is written in the INSEAD Manifesto, which for me was also inspired by the Elliot Eisner 10 Lessons That the Arts Teach list. This is my motivations and beliefs and yours, because we all wrote this manifesto together. And I think about art for me, well, you know, to be honest with you, it's given me my voice. And for me, art is more than just making. It's an exploration of the human condition, of what it is to be human, because art always speaks to the heart. It can move us, it can wake us up, it can, and I think it should challenge us. Art can be timeless, art can be innovative, art can be a memory, art can be a message, art can shimmer and shine, and art can heal. And art breaks boundaries, and art celebrates life, and it reflects life, and it imitates life, and it feeds my soul. And from being a small child, it's been the most consistent and important part of my life. And I want this right to art education for every learner of every age in every part of the world. And I feel that with my networks and connections now, I can advocate for this, because I feel as if I'm with my very own tribe of people who all think the same and feel the same. So I've used my networks to collaborate and to create. I've used it, or the network, as a tool to help me campaign with other people for the arts in schools and against government initiatives, which I have to be honest, in my own country, government initiatives have been toxic and quite damaging to visual art education in England. So I've used it to share good practice, positive stories, to offer space for debate and for professional development, always aware of the fact that, as Lippmann said, a community of inquiry, it represents a magnification of the efficiency of the learning process. Since students who thought that all learning had to be learning by oneself come to discover that they can also use and profit from the learning processes of others. So for me, being in a community of practice is the single most important thing in my professional life, leading also to friendships that develop from being a network, and which I really value hugely. I have made friends for life through the art education networks that I'm part of. And another kind of nice example is that 7 years ago, after running a professional development program, which was kind of online with teachers, I worked with a lady called Eleanor Brass to set up something called the Sketchbook Circle in the United Kingdom. And that was about bringing art teachers together through sharing sketchbooks. And Eleanor now runs this with George and Aish. They're both very busy art teachers, but we're now in our kind of 7th year of this. And the aims of the Sketchbook Circle were basically to give a framework that takes into consideration that teachers are really busy people. And it was to encourage our art teachers to make time and space for making personal work and for reflection, because you reflect when you make art. And we wanted to re-engage teachers with their own artistic practice and to build up their confidence, get them to explore a depth of making and enable them particularly to collaborate with others across our country. And that would eventually obviously improve their classroom practice, and it strengthens our art teacher network. So through the Sketchbook Circle, we wanted teachers to allow themselves to become that true combination of artist and teacher. And the physical books that we share a book between basically 3 people over the period of 12 months. And we'll be recruiting for the 2021 Sketchbook Circle in November. That book goes around, and we have interaction online through Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. We've even had exhibitions, which were wonderful. And recently, of course, because of COVID, some things have disappeared, but not the physical sketchbook. So Eleanor and George are organising online CPD sessions, and we are a really true community of practice that supports the artist teacher, and that supports the mental health and well-being of really busy people who right now are under such enormous pressures in our schools and our places of education. So I kind of want to include also a reference to a document that I read that was written in 2009 by a group called Future Lab in the United Kingdom, Social Software and Learning. And the reason that I want to put this is that I think we all have kind of an art college background, don't we? So there's a very good example in this document of one of the historically important parallels of practice that has been there for a long time, and that is what we call the crit in the art college, or the critique, which is like a central feature of teaching and creative practice in our art and design and our architecture schools. And what that is it consists of a critical dialogue between peers where work in progress is exposed to other people for developmental discussion. And it's a means of expressing the collegial activity of helping each other in an emergent process. It is an interaction that changes the learner and leads to a better outcome and to a more reflexive learner. However, most of all, it is that critical community of practice that is essential to the crit. It is a community in which we can trust the judgment of others, and a community where there is no fear about presenting ideas. So the crit develops now into the dialogue of our times. We are in a large critique. It's supportive, it's sometimes challenging, but it is usually a very positive and affirmative interaction. So I kind of going to end this talk today by saying Be true to yourself. Connect with those who you need to connect with. Enjoy art, love art, make art, share art, educate through art. And remember why it is that you do what you do. Your moral values, your ethics, your beliefs, your integrity. So thank you very much. What I have done today, I hope, is I have shared my story, and I will end with the question, maybe you can go away and you can think, what's your story? Thank you so much for listening and watching. Goodbye.